Hello and welcome to the Hoop Troop podcast. I am Matt O'Connor, and joining me as they do on all of our shows are my cousin Luke Drobner.
What's up, guys?
And my brother Mike O'Connor.
What's up?
The Hoop Troop is back. We are recording this on Wednesday, February 7th at night, the day before the deadline. So there's less than 24 hours before the NBA trade deadline. We've seen a few trades go down since the last time we recorded. I feel like we recorded probably closer to the new year-ish, if I remember correctly. Maybe a little before. So there's been some bigger trades, some smaller trades since then. Hopefully we get some fun action the next day or so. So I'll start. The first question I'll pose is between now and 3 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow, if you could see one trade happen, what would you want it to be and why? And it doesn't have to be specific. I know you're both Knicks fans, so it doesn't have to be specific to the Knicks. It can be something that's fun for the league, something that's just like funny in general. But let's start with if you could have your dream deadline.
I mean, top of mind, dream deadline, the Knicks pick up a point guard. Because after Brooklyn, we have nobody.
Yeah, but there's like no one available. Because, for example, the Timberwolves just traded for Monty Morris to be their backup, which I thought he would have been and ultimately was a pretty cheap trade. And then they really got rid of Shake Milton in a second in terms of value.
We trade so often with Detroit. I wonder if the price was the same for us versus Minnesota.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But you're right. I mean, like essentially nothing. It was like two reserve players that don't play right now and a second. So
yeah, nothing major. And actually, I was texting my friend who's a big Timberwolves fan. He was saying like, as long as Shake Milton isn't on the court anymore, I don't care. So he didn't really care what we were getting back. He was just like, I just needed him done. So he didn't. I mean, I think they brought him in thinking he was going to be this bench creator in an expanded role, and he just really didn't pan out. And maybe that's the personnel on the Timberwolves in their system. I don't know, because I liked him before, but yeah,
he was in Philadelphia, right?
Yeah. So I mean, just not the right fit, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. It could have just he had a hard time adjusting to Minnesota or something like that. Something caught him off guard, but. I mean, way down. His offensive numbers are terrible. He stopped shooting the ball at the rate he was. So.
So anyway, back to you saying the Knicks trading for a guard. I'll let you. Who do you even think it would be?
I mean, I know we've talked a lot about like Brogdon and Tyus Jones and guys like that being potential trade targets, and also like, I mean, if we wanted to go for a bigger fish like DeJounte Murray, I don't understand how he comes in off the bench for us, but in my opinion, I just think we need someone to help that second unit move the ball. I think we take Brunson off the floor, and who are we left with? Like DiVincenzo, Josh Hart, Precious Achiuwa. Also, we're plagued with injuries, right? 3 starters out, Grimes is out. So we just need someone to like continue to move the ball and help with the flow on that second unit.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. The only problem with that is I've seen Brogdon obviously makes a ton of sense because he's a good defender. Obviously, you want someone who's a little healthier, especially given all the Knicks injuries right now. But I saw apparently the Blazers are taking him off the block, so he might not even be available because they're trying. And I don't know if that's leverage driving things up. That could just be fodder just between now and the deadline. But if he is unavailable, and you have to start shifting, and the rumors you hear around the Knicks are oddly not all point guards. So it was at first, then. Now, and I'll just rattle off the list of injuries for anyone who isn't like glued in on the Knicks. They're obviously without Mitchell Robinson. It sounds like he's not going to even start touching a court until after the All-Star break. And even then, I think, what was it, a broken foot? It's going to be a little longer. It's probably be closer to the end of the year. So he's out for a while. Julius Randle has a dislocated shoulder that could potentially be worse. They're still kind of waiting for some of the inflammation to go down. They're going to reevaluate him after the All-Star break. So he's out at least another, I'm going to give it a month and a half, probably.
Yeah,
then you have
questionable for
except today it just came out that now he has like bone spur type. Now let me get the exact injury because they just shared it recently. But it looks like it's a bone spur irritation in his shooting elbow. That's not great, and the Knicks have been super weird about disclosing that injury. I think that scares me. They're also Quentin Grimes has, I mean, granted, he hyperextended his knee or whatever it was. So he's only going to miss a few more games. He'll probably be back before the All-Star break.
Mm-hmm.
Still not great, but that's 4 very important rotation players who are injured. And then Jalen Brunson sprained his ankle last night. Now he's questionable to play tomorrow. I don't know if they're going to punt. I don't know what they're going to do, but that's like half your team right there. And not only half your team, like the best players on your team, arguably. So like they're in disarray. So I don't know if trading for a point guard makes sense. And now you see the rumors trickle in, very glued to Bruce Brown. There's rumors of them going and trying to get also get Chris Boucher from the Raptors if they do that. And you start seeing with the Wizards, you brought up Tyus Jones, Gafford's name comes in. You start seeing bigger guys, bigger wings, other people who might fit that. I don't know what injury information they're withholding, but all these leaks that keep coming out keep telling me that they need another forward or big because one of these injuries is worse than we know. That's my fear.
Then what's the goal this season then? Like, are we going to get to a point where all of this is for naught because
as we're tied with the Bucks for the 3 seed and a half game back of the Cavs for 2, which is it's fascinating because healthy, you're saying full steam ahead, this team can do it. Everyone hurt like this. I mean, you're not going to crack the top 3 if you're this banged up. It's just unsustainable. They've been playing Brunson crazy minutes, so even if his sprain isn't that bad, DiVincenzo scoring like 26 a game since these injuries have happened. Is that something we can count on? Probably not. Josh Hart got hurt yesterday too. Granted, again, I think it's minor, but still, like all these guys are super banged up. You had Hartenstein had like the tendinopathy issue. Like little things like that are really going to add up, especially when they're all playing huge minutes. So barring Malachi Flynn being the savior or whoever they trade for, I don't know. Like you're probably going to be I'm going to say the 5 seed at worst is my guess, but then you're going to have, your work cut out for you.
I mean, I think this season, obviously, we still want to try and win a championship, but we also, obviously, we're banged up and it's thinking about next year, right? Like, who can we acquire for the Evan Fournier type money, right? $19 million that we can extend if we're looking to compete next year, right? And so
what do you think about the concept? And the reason I kind of am intrigued by Bruce Brown, even though he does pretty much the exact same things Josh Hart does, and we don't necessarily need another guy playing that role, is Fournier's contract. And granted, he does have a team option for like the 19 whatever million. So he could technically be on the books for next year. But if you wanted to trade Fournier and a pick or something like that to bring in a guy like Bruce Brown, he has another year on his deal. So then if this summer you decide, hey, that star is available, he's a good salary match, and he's under contract for next year, do you think maybe either holding Fournier or trading for a guy with an extra year like that or extra 2 years, something like that to match salary is a better idea than going all in on this year?
If we're just thinking about matching salary, it doesn't matter if we have Bruce Brown or Fournier, right?
Except a team that wants to like stay afloat might want Bruce Brown in place of Fournier. Yeah, only because that's a more competitive guy to trade. Or if you ultimately trade Josh Hart instead of Bruce Brown, I don't know. I'm just again spitballing.
So if the value of Bruce Brown is say Fournier and a first round pick, why can't we just send that instead of Bruce Brown to whoever else we're doing business with?
Well, I mean, there's all sorts of trade rumors. I don't know why they would do this, but
no,
I'm just speculating based on what we've heard.
I also think Bruce Brown does he do a lot of the same stuff as Josh Hart 100%, but
he's probably a better shooter.
Yeah, he's probably a little bit better of a shooter. I know in college he played more of like a point guard role, so maybe we're confident in his ability to step in and play a lot of backup point guard minutes, especially if Brunson needs a breather and he can be a playmaker. He wasn't really doing that, or I don't know if he's been doing that, but I know when he was on Denver, he was more of like a spot up shooter, kind of do like a 2-man game with Jokic. We have Hartenstein who can kind of do some stuff, but
yeah, I'm kind of envisioning him doing that with surrounding Randall and Brunson, because I think again they're going to be more ball dominant, similar to how Jokic was, and he's going to have to do the dirty work. He's going to do a lot of slashing, a lot of rebounding. He's going to hit the ground and get loose balls, the 50-50 balls, things like that. He's going to be that role player, but with the injuries, if they do trade for him, he's going to assume a bigger role. He just has to.
100%.
Right. So it's intriguing. I don't hate it. I don't love it. I wish there was something better out there. I definitely don't think DeJounte Murray's the answer because those rumors have been out there.
I think he plays too big of a role, right? Like who's going to suffer because Murray's on the roster? Whereas I think if you bring in a guy like a Tyus Jones, you can reasonably bring him in off the bench.
Yeah. That's exactly what I think. So I think that is probably the route they go, or they do nothing. And I honestly wouldn't blame them for doing nothing and just keeping all of your trade chips at your disposal. Because realistically, I with all these injuries and all the gray area, how much is a Tyus Jones moving the needle? Because that trade might not make sense. And so that's
Not
why
this
I
year,
wouldn't
but
blame them for if the asking price isn't even, unless you're clearly winning this trade,
yeah.
I don't think it's worth it. So that's what I've come to terms with that in the next, what is it, 14 hours before the trade deadline or whatever it is.
Yeah,
But
we're getting close.
yeah,
I think it's also important. Like teams are also thinking about the future. You look at the Houston Rockets trading for Steven Adams. Like Steven Adams isn't going to see a court this year,
the little
right?
pre-agency. Yeah, I like it.
But a little, yeah, exactly. So same thing with the Knicks. Like, is there someone we want to acquire right now that we feel we have a good shot of re-signing and keeping? And I think another name that's also been thrown out there is Jordan Clarkson, which I think is also really intriguing. Obviously, we talk
Yeah.
about being a scoring threat off the bench. Jordan Clarkson is that guy, right? He won Sixth Man of the Year. He's been doing it for a couple years in Utah now. So
I think, yeah, the problem there is Ainge. Ainge is erratic, and you never know what he's going to ask for and what he's going to bait to other teams. So, like, I don't even. Part of me is like, do you even engage that? Also, he doesn't necessarily fit the Thibodeau mold. Like, I don't think of him necessarily as a defender at all. And when you're looking at Tibbs' role players in particular, and I understand we're
yep.
looking for scoring off the bench. That's the main focus here. That scares me with Tibbs. It just does because I know that's going to
Tibbs
lead
doesn't
into
want to be
Brunson
like that.
playing. That's going to lead to Brunson playing another, 38 minutes a game, which
Yeah, I do.
scares me.
I do think Clarkson is a little bit more of a offensive minded player, but I don't think he is necessarily like a one-sided player. I think he does bring an intensity on defense. I don't know how much Utah Jazz basketball you watch, but
No,
he
I
does. He
mean, don't get
does
me
seem to
wrong. I'm
like
not. Yeah,
he wants to go out there and compete, which I think is like huge in Tibbs' book. Right? I want to see you go out there and play hard. I think that's why we've seen Achua had so much success here on the roster. Does he make the most beautiful plays ever? No, but he's out there scrapping for 40 minutes or whatever. So
yeah. So we've mentioned a few guys now. Granted, in the context of the Knicks trading for them, I
mhm.
want to pivot now. Let's look at. So you've brought up. I mean, let's face it. The Jazz have 4 or 5 guys they could look into trading right now at the deadline.
They're definitely sellers.
Let's talk about a Kelly Olynyk because he's one that, and now I'm going to frame it in context of a trade that happened today. The Boston Celtics traded for Xavier Tillman, which I think is a
Mhm.
perfect fit for them as a backup center, just another additional big. We can kind of space the floor a little bit, young, hungry. That's where I think
Mhm.
it's a great. You only gave up a few second rounders, but I think that kind of indicated to me that the Olynyk asking price was a little too high for them, which rightfully so. They don't have a ton of assets, and I don't think it would have made sense for them to do it. Who do
Mhm.
you think could benefit from adding a more versatile center like Olynyk?
You want to give it a shot, Mike?
I
I
mean,
have one in mind.
everyone's talking about the Sixers.
So that's the obvious one because they're obviously whatever's going on with Embiid's injury.
Hmm.
Um, which for those who don't know, some sort of a meniscus injury. They're also being weird about it. Like it looks like there's some flap or something that he had to have restored in a procedure. No one really knows what that means. So I think they're hopeful he can come back before the end of the season. I'm very doubtful of that. But in any event, if they are trying to just stay afloat, getting another center in there that's like can space the floor, will rebound, is a little more versatile, and can play different ways, he kind of fits your
Hmm.
system. That way, if Embiid comes back, great. You have a good backup center that you don't need to play Embiid heavy minutes down the stretch. Um, I don't know. I think that makes a ton of sense. If the Knicks do legitimately have center injuries, maybe you do look into something that's like Clarkson and Olynyk and you do a little bigger deal there.
Hmm.
But like otherwise, I don't know how many teams really are in need of a center. And that's why I think the Sixers would be smart to leverage that with the Jazz.
Yeah, I like the Clarkson Olynyk package. I think Maxey plays a lot of minutes for the Sixers right now. I think he's playing like 40 minutes a game. We talk
Yeah.
about it with a lot of these Tibbs guys, right? Like that's not sustainable. You don't want to do that. I understand Maxey is what, 21, 22, and you can ride him a little harder than a 7 year vet, but there is wear and tear. So like if you bring in a guy like Olynyk, who's kind of more like a glue guy, power forward, I think of him a lot like a Draymond Green or like a PJ Tucker or something like that. And then Clarkson obviously can take some load off Maxey. And I mean, even Olynyk, you think about, like I said, he's like a Draymond Green or like a PJ Tucker. You think about like the Bucks who could use like a big forward, big versatile forward. I think Olynyk fits the mold there. I think obviously, you talk about Olynyk being a center, you're definitely right. He's definitely more of a big than he is a forward. So there's a lot of
Right.
people who could use him. Contenders who want a glue guy, a guy who does a little bit of everything. I don't think he's ever gonna, score 20 or grab 10 rebounds or dish out 10 assists, but he's gonna put in a 5-5-5 game almost every night. So
Yeah. I think too, in looking at guys of his caliber, this deadline's super weird because, as I mean, everyone knows, the wealth of picks available are held by a handful of teams. So these
100%.
contending teams don't have a lot they can give up. And so in a normal year, you'd say, oh, here, I'm comfortable giving you a pick or two and like maybe you put protection on, whatever. You don't have that same ability now because teams are so limited in what they're able to trade. And when you're only doing it for these marginal upgrades, which I think, again, with a lot of the teams we've mentioned, like does for the Sixers, for example, trading at least a first round pick for Kelly Olynyk. I'm imagining that's what it's going to take. Is that enough? Does that move the needle? No, to me, you're going to have him beat out for realistically the rest of the season, maybe back for like the tail end and the playoffs. I don't think that's enough to instill confidence for me to make a trade right now. I think you have to, the Sixers, you wait until the offseason, unless they have intel on his injury that's better than anything that's been reported. But like, I don't know. To me, a lot of these contending teams don't have the assets to go make these deals. So it's either going to be nothing happens by 3 p.m. or these sellers need to settle and they're just going to take whatever they can take. And it's going to be like they're going to get bad value for their guys. Yeah.
Why aren't the sellers settling? Like I understand the buyers being like, well, I don't know, but why are the sellers not?
Well, because I don't think they're getting fair value for the guy. I mean, if you think historically on what you would have gotten, like, think about, again, I'll go back just a few years ago when the Knicks traded Marcus Morris. Like, it's not like he was even an all-star. He was starting for the Knicks and playing well, but they got a first-round pick out of it, like easy, and they got other pieces too. Like, it wasn't just a pick. I would argue Kelly Olynyk is right in that mold of like that talent level of player.
Maybe
And
there's
so,
a,
like, so I just think there's a reluctance for teams to be giving that up. Like that was when the Clippers had just assembled. They still had some assets that they could go put together. So like I think there's a few things going on. And like I mean, again, look at the contending teams and what they're missing, or like what draft assets they're missing. Lakers have nothing. They want to contend. Clippers have nothing, realistically. Sixers have something, but probably don't want to use it. Celtics really don't have much. They made their trades over the summer. Bucks don't have much after trading for Dame. In the West, Timberwolves have nothing. The Thunder have plenty, but do you really rock the boat?
No, if you're the Thunder, you keep on course. You just kind of
Right. So going
You're doing
through
it.
just the top teams across the board, the Cavs, who are now in second in the East, have nothing really to trade. Like all these top teams are pretty hamstrung. So the teams that would normally be like, yes, we're committing, we're going all in, aren't the ones making the deals. It's more the teams that are in like sixth place who are like, oh, okay, yeah, we could think about it and try and make a run. But like, why? There's no one that really moves the needle. So that's why it's such a weird deadline. Do you accept, all right, we'll take pennies on the dollar because otherwise we're going to lose this guy for nothing? Or do you just say, screw it, we'll keep him on our team? Like, there's no reason for us to make a weird trade for no reason. So that's why I'm like, I don't know. It's going to be a weird tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm looking historically. I think you're right. Like some of these guys get traded for a lot. Looking at the last PJ Tucker large transaction when he was traded from the Rockets to the Bucks, uh, he was traded with another player and a second round pick and a first round pick for DJ Augustine, a young player, and 2 first round picks. So, I mean, there's a lot of value there. Obviously, there's other people in the trade, so it's really hard to assess exactly what PJ Tucker is worth. But you're right. There isn't a lot of value out there to be gained. I mean, there's not people looking to buy super hard. But
And I think that also speaks volumes too. I think everyone's looking ahead to the new CBA too, and everyone's afraid to commit long-term money. And so the deadline's a little weird because normally you would have teams that are like, we're going all in, we don't care about the future. Now you kind of have to really think about the future because no one knows what that's going to look like. And so, like, for example, a guy that and I don't mean to just totally pivot, but like the Warriors, disarray, not really sure which direction they're going in. Andrew Wiggins is a name that's been floated out there, but that's 3 years of money that like you would think normally someone's like, all right, maybe change scenery, we need a wing. Like I
So you
would
think
get
these
it.
short-term contracts are being valued over these long-term contracts? Like
That's my
Olenek's an
thought.
expiring contract this year.
Right. And so, but if you're trading for a guy in the past, normally it's you do it and then you sign him longer term. Very rarely are you trading assets for a rental unless it's like a we're moving the needle, we're winning a championship. So
Yeah.
that's like, are you really committing now to paying Olynyk long term in the future when like maybe we test it in free agency, we see what we're looking at with everything. That's why I'm thinking it's the pre-agency idea is interesting because you need to have your 5-year plan. And I think the Rockets clearly aren't in any threat of hitting that tax level or anything like that. So it made sense for them.
They're gonna have to start paying guys though, right? They have Jalen Green, Jabari Smith Jr., Alperen Sengun.
Although I think Jalen Green is a trade candidate too. I've seen his name floated out there.
Yeah, I think he's got to prove more if they want to get the value they think
Yeah,
he is or
definitely.
value they want back. So, but they're gonna have to start paying guys. You think about like other teams who kind of developed together and met this salary block, like the Oklahoma City Thunder. They had Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook obviously going to get paid, and then they had to decide, are we going to pay Serge Ibaka or are we going to pay James Harden? And they picked Serge Ibaka, right? And so
Yeah.
the Rockets are going to have to make a similar type situation. Who are we paying? When are we paying them?
I think that's a bigger question for the Thunder. And at some point, you have all those picks too, and they're going to be valuable. But whoever you're trading
Mhm.
for, realistically, with those picks, is going to cost money. So they're going to be in a weird spot in a few years, which is why I almost think like if the right person's available, you have to go all in now before the payroll really hits.
Yeah.
But I digress. That wasn't necessarily the the point of bringing it up.
No, I mean, I do like bringing the Steven Adams trade up. I think it's really important to kind of see where teams are at. Some teams are looking to, trade for someone and acquire their bird rights and try and keep
Right.
them around. I think, when you think about even like a corporation hiring, right? You think about, all the companies we work at, when they hire us, they expect us to be there for a long time. They want to develop us. They want us to be successful within their system. NBA teams are just like that, right?
And I think
So,
too, especially in that model, like you're talking the Steven Adams trade in terms of that context of like they're looking for that
Mhm.
commitment. Steven
Yeah.
Adams is like the perfect definition of like he's always bought in. He's a good presence in the locker room. They have some younger players. I think he's a good person to learn from. Like I actually
Exactly.
really like that for them, and I think he'll probably be a good fit with like
And
I feel
he
like Udoka's
is
hard
valuable
nosed
on
and
the
he's
court
cool
as
with that.
well. Right? They
Right.
they need a big body center. If they have to face a Nikola Jokic or an Anthony Davis, do you want
Yeah.
Alperen Sengun out there guarding him?
Mm,
So,
no.
yeah, I mean, I'm not Ime Udoka. I can't tell you what the lineups are going to look like, but
Right.
um, he adds value. He's not going to play 35 minutes a night. He's not a starter anymore, I don't think. But if you can get 20 really great minutes out of Steven Adams, which is probably very possible still, you've made a success. And if you can bring him back
Yeah.
on a team-friendly contract, why not? I also think it's important to look at the other trades that have been made today, right? Like we talked about the Celtics trading for Xavier Tillman, Monte
Right.
Morris to the Timberwolves. Um, who else was traded? Simon Fontecchio from Utah to the Pistons.
Right.
You, you know,
Pistons are busy.
yeah, you see these like small adjustments, right? Like we're not looking obviously like the big trade this year before the deadline was the Knicks making a move for OG, which has worked out for us. It's
And
been
no,
fantastic.
I'll even back that up because yes, that's big. Siakam's big. Rozier has been
Siakam,
big. So
Siakam.
those three were all pre-deadline. They were like a month removed from the deadline. The big one that no one associates with like an in-season trade though is Harden. That's
Uh,
been the trade, and it's worked
they were looking to move him
wonders.
forever.
Right, but it worked wonders for the Clippers. Other than like the first 6 games where they were getting familiar with each other, they have been fantastic with Harden. Like they realistically, you could convince me that they're, I don't want to say the favorite, but top three to win the finals.
I think the West still goes through Denver, but
Yeah.
the Clippers are not a
They're in
distant
just
second.
they're in such a weird place where they just really at this point need to prove it because
Yeah.
they've blown a 3-1 lead. They lost in the Western Conference. I guess that's twice, right? They lost in the Western Conference final. Or
And
no,
now you're
only
setting yourself up. The fun thing that I'm hoping for, and it's just for chaos, is if they're the one and the Lakers get in through the play-in as the 8. And then we finally get Battle LA like this. Oh, it'd be unreal.
and the Clippers sweep them.
I think it would be a sweep.
It would
I
have.
think he goes.
Oh yeah, I don't think it would be close. The Lakers are not good.
Austin Reeves is gonna get cooked.
Yeah, pretty much. All right. Speaking of the Lakers, since there's obviously so many rumors surrounding them, LeBron putting
nothing-
all the pressure in the world in the front office. What do you think, if anything, they should do?
I'm shocked.
I
by
have
that.
my opinion, and no one in it's never happening. But
You know what they need to do is they all need to sit down in a room together and apologize to each other.
what's
The
that going to do,
Lakers-
Luke?
The Lakers locker room is so toxic right now. The fans online, LeBron's trying to win a championship. This is his last chance. I think they all need to sit down and they need to take the pressure off each other, right? Like the team they have on paper is a
Bad.
fantastic team. Not bad. They none of their players are, liabilities on either end of the floor. You have LeBron, obviously a great player. You have Anthony Davis, who
He's been
maybe not
fantastic this year.
Yeah, no, yeah, I think he's doing everything he can in his role, and I really think that in a healthy environment, this Lakers team goes way farther than in the environment they're living in right
So
now.
let me ask you, because the big rumor is obviously just DeJounte Murray for them. Do you think that? Do you like that at all? Because I mean, D'Lo was bad for all but like the last 10 to 15 games, but he was pretty terrible. And like Lakers, no one wanted like him playing.
No, yeah, D'Angelo started hot, right? He was the D'Angelo Russell we all expect him to be.
Yeah.
And then very slowly a decline. It was like 18 in the first month, and then he was down to 16, and then he was down to 13, and then he was down to 10, and so he just kind of like snowballed into a bad situation. I think these past couple of weeks, the Lakers have probably reassured him, just like they've reassured Darvin Ham, like you're here to stay, or we're very confident in you, things like that. I think obviously what we see a lot of is people online talking, and I'm sure the Lakers at some point have explored opportunities to make the fans happy because it's a sport controlled by fans just as much as anybody else. And
Of course.
um,
I
but,
think
it's about playing your role.
I think
DeJounte
they're
Murray
being
doesn't help them. Equal
well, and
value players.
I think they're in a very delicate spot because LeBron theoretically could walk this summer if it's
Let him
not
walk.
going well. Again, fine, but if you don't show him a commitment to get better, then you're really setting that up. Let's say they have either they don't make the playoffs or it's an early exit.
No,
He's gone. He will leave. I mean, I don't think there's any reason for him to stay.
There
There's
should
not.
be no. Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
What do you think of that Mitchell rumor that came out?
Yeah,
what do
I
you
mean
think
that's
of that,
nonsense.
Mitchell?
That's them saying like, oh, this is why we're not doing anything at the deadline is because we think we can save and then have 3 first-round picks this summer to trade. That's what it is. So
Yeah,
no, I don't buy it. He's not going. They're not. Also, like, no, there's just no way that's not happening. I think the Nets have more to trade. The Knicks have more to trade.
Then
Other teams have more to trade to get Donovan Mitchell than the Lakers do. So even if the Lakers are like, we want him, someone else is going to shell out more to the Cavs.
so then why are they not doing anything right now?
Well, the reason they're not is you look at it and you say our flexibility is a product of if you wait until the summer, you have 3 picks available to trade. So you could do something bigger next summer. Also, you look at the tax. I think if they were to shed Christian Wood's salary, they avoid a certain tax after the year. I forget exactly what the threshold they're in. That's part of it. And so like there are a couple moves to be made there. And it's like, how much is really available? Like DeJounte Murray or someone else that's really going to move the needle and make them that much better. And they're currently sitting, let me pull up the standings. We're looking at
They're
them
in,
sitting
like,
in
ninth.
ninth. They're a game and a half behind Dallas in 8th, which is like gettable. I mean, honestly, you could convince me they could get up into the 6. Like, I mean, looking at who's ahead of them, Dallas is a game and a half. New Orleans is 3 games ahead of them. And then the Suns and Kings are both 3.5 games ahead of them.
I have no doubt this Lakers team could be successful, but we
Right,
continue to
but-
think about it's all about we need to retain LeBron. LeBron needs to win a championship. LeBron this, LeBron that. If you're an NBA organization, LeBron is just another player to you. Are your championship odds better when you have a LeBron on your team? 100%. But is a LeBron team getting you past a Jokic team? Are they getting you past the Clippers?
This is where my opinion comes in.
I'm not even sure they're going to be an unexperienced Thunder team in the playoffs, right? Like,
Yeah.
Well,
I think they would. I think just the experience alone, they would beat them. But yes, your point is spot on. There is no certainty with this team. this is where my idea comes in. And yes, it is fueled by some of the things that happened last week when LeBron was baiting everyone and trying to get his team to make trades. The Lakers should just blow it up. Like, what are we waiting for? You have none of your assets, really. Just blow it up. LeBron's old. People would still trade a lot to get him rather than let him walk, which if Bronny gets drafted, maybe he does anyway. Like, I don't know. And then you could probably try and sell high on Davis and just retool, or if you want to keep Davis and like build a system around him or something like that. I don't know. But I think you have to look at the situation and be like, we are hemorrhaging our future assets when like the trade, theoretically, let's say they make the DeJounte Murray trade. The pick they're trading, LeBron's gonna be retired by then. So the team could be atrocious at that point. You better win a championship. If you're trading those assets, you better win. And
they're
it's not a guarantee. So that's why you look to wait until the summer. And when you have more assets to go in and make like a bigger splash where you might be able to win one next year.
Yeah, I don't even know if making, they could get Embiid on the team. They could add Giannis to the team. I don't think that helps them. I really think it comes down to, every team, every championship team is going to have that guy, right? That number 1A prime top 10 option. Tatum, Luka, Jokic, Giannis, right? We talk about these guys. LeBron is still that guy, and he will never not be that guy. And if you're the Lakers and you want to say it's all about winning championships, our goal is to win a championship every year. And if we don't win a championship this year, we need to start thinking about next year and the year after, right? And so there's strategy to this. Every team has done this since, I guess every team except Miami has done this with LeBron, right? They've depleted their assets and ruined their future to try and help LeBron win a championship. Why?
And in all fairness, the way Miami was assembled, that was all three of them went there at once. It's not like they had to make a trade to be good.
They agreed to it, right? And when LeBron was like, "Ooh, I'm gonna leave," they were like, "Okay, leave," right? They didn't trade away their
Well, I don't
future.
know. Pat Riley was pissed. I don't think he was like, "Okay, leave." I think he wanted him to stay. Pat Riley hates LeBron
obviously
now.
you want LeBron to stay, especially when LeBron's in his prime and he goes back to Cleveland and wins one, right? So, but you have to think, right? You really have to think. Look at the Knicks, and I really applaud the Knicks, right? We always said to them, as fans, we were like, why haven't we tried to make that home run swing and go for a championship? Well, because then we deplete our assets, we destroy our future, right? I think
and there's a smart way of doing it. And
exactly.
And to give the Lakers their credit, they gave up all their picks to get Anthony Davis and they won a championship. They already won one. So I don't want to diminish that. But now the second wave of moves that they've done, none of them have been successful. So you could argue last year's deadline, fine. But even then, like they didn't win. And now they're in this position because they had to re-sign people and whatever. So
but Miami Heat have done enough to keep their future alive.
Right.
At some point, Jimmy Butler is going to leave, right? And they'll have to focus on Bam Adebayo. But at least their wheels continue to churn. I don't think the Heat have ever been, picking in the top 5 every single year because they depleted their assets for one guy. You think about, when LeBron left Cleveland the first time, they had 3 first number 1 overall picks back to back to back.
Yeah.
And the Cavs did it. And when he leaves LA, the same thing's going to happen, right? They're going to struggle without him. But again, they're going to struggle and do what? Let someone else benefit from LeBron not being there. So I really think that, you need to think about your future and you need to say to LeBron, hey, we're happy to have you here. We love having you here. But as the Lakers come first. And
right.
I think it's so crazy that we talk about, trading D'Angelo Russell and we got to make these adjustments. Fire Darvin Ham. Why? Right? Like, you don't need to.
Yeah.
It's such a I'm out on LeBron. I'm done with him. I'm over
I think
it.
you trade him. Personally, I felt this way for a while. I think it makes sense. Like I don't know what the Lakers think they're competing for right now. So I think it's time to just blow it up and reset. You retool, you get more options again, and then you try moving forward. But yeah, I don't know.
I don't even think you do anything. Look at what the Nets are doing, right? They're like, oh well, we don't control our future right now, so we should try and win, even if we know we're not going to. And I think, right, that's the right idea. Just take it nice and slow, continue to trend upwards and you'll make it. So the Lakers will, LeBron will leave. They'll have Anthony Davis. They'll try and be good with him for as long as they can. And hopefully it works out. But
yeah,
sounds pretty bleak.
It's a bad situation.
It's not great.
It's created by the paranoia that LeBron brings into these organizations.
All right. So now that we've talked a little deadline, I'm trying to think if there's anything else notable that we're kind of waiting to happen. Um, I mean, Dallas, I've seen is rumored to like maybe be getting rid of Grant Williams, but I don't necessarily consider that notable. Um, we
I think
haven't
every
talked
team wants
Rozier
to
or
have it.
Siakam really, but
Yeah, I mean Siakam to Indiana, I think that's a really great fit. You think about a guy
but
who's
again, contingent on him
pace.
resigning there. He might not resign. So that's something else that they need to weigh. I'm sure they don't make the trade unless it's kind of clear that he's going to stay. And I also
Well, yeah,
imagine him and Halliburton are going to get along and they're going to be fine.
we saw
But
the
if he
Kings didn't
walks,
make the
then yeah, that's a bad
exception.
trade. If he walks this summer, that's a bad trade.
The Kings backed out. Siakam was like, "I'm not going to stay," and the Kings were like, "Okay,
Yeah,
see you later."
right.
So,
That's a team.
obviously the sorry,
Sacramento's a team that is caught in that what you guys have been talking about, like the fifth or sixth team in the conference, and like not sure if they should overspend for something versus. So that's like a textbook example of
Yeah.
someone who probably should be doing something by the deadline, but
And they
isn't.
don't have like the guy that they would be trading for isn't available. They need another star, and the star's not available. So like you kind of have to wait. And so any of these like moves around the edges don't really do anything for them.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um,
I think they need
but
to upgrade their roster. I think they have those stars, right? Fox won the Clutch Player of the Year last year, right?
well, they technically don't have all
But
stars.
they're
So
apparently not all stars.
which don't
Uh,
even get me started on that. It's ridiculous.
Sabonis is having a ridiculous season, and he's averaging
Sabonis
like,
is averaging 20, 10, and 8 and not an
yeah, that's
all-star.
fine.
Don't I
So
think even more than that, to be honest. It's insane that he's not an all-star.
the
Insane to me.
the I think it proves the All-Star game is very political, right? I think when it really comes down to it, they should think about first, second, third team All NBA. And if Sabonis doesn't make one of those teams, ridiculous, right? Absolutely
Except you start breaking out
atrocious.
the list of players. I think it's harder to make all NBA than it is to make. Well, actually, I don't know. It's probably harder to
Yeah,
make the All
I
Star
mean,
team.
like, I think if you think about the breakdown of the rosters for All-Star, right, it's what,
Right, 15
12,
players,
12,
15
13,
players
something.
all NBA or 24 players in NBA All Star. Granted,
Right, so
12 for each conference. Yeah,
each team has three centers rather than the whole NBA. But I mean, who else at center is putting up better stats than?
is he considered a center? Or is he more like a power forward? I guess he plays center for them.
Yeah, I think if you're thinking about an all NBA vote, you're thinking center. I think it's also important to remember that the NBA has that rule now where if you don't play 65 games, you're ineligible for those
That's a
teams.
good point.
And
We're
Embiid's
gonna
going to
see
miss a lot of time.
Embiid
Embiid's
is
not going to
not
play 65
eligible.
games.
Embiid's not
So
eligible. I think already we've seen as far as stars go, Embiid's not going to be eligible. Kyrie's not going to be eligible. There's a couple others who are like on the cusp. Um,
yeah, Chris Paul. But
yeah, I bet with this Randall injury, he might not be.
yeah, hey, it's a tough choice. I think it makes sense though, right? The best ability is availability. So
Yeah, I mean, I get.
and
I
it
also just, I think the rule is a little silly and probably needs to be tweaked, and it's probably part of why Embiid got hurt. Is now you're
yeah
pressuring these guys to play. Like I think the people who need to feel the pressure of their stars resting and like doing the load management is the owners, not the players. Because the players,
yeah
I think in most cases, probably want to play.
you
But
shouldn't take away from the guys who miss time because of injury. You want to take away from the guys who are resting.
right. And so that's why I think if you were going to do this 65 game rule or whatever, like
Hmm.
I still don't think that's the way you enforce it, but I still think I think it's more like you investigate the injury reports, and if they aren't in line, then you don't find the player, you find the owner.
Hmm.
Like I think that's and you make it like a hefty fine so that way they are totally incentivized to make sure that if anyone's healthy, they're playing. So, and yeah,
Yeah,
it's not going to be perfect, but I think that's the better way to go about it instead of punishing the players. Because Embiid played hurt because he was getting so much backlash, which fine, rightfully so. They should have been more. They should have been more clarity about their injury reports and everything. He
yeah,
felt a lot of pressure. He plays, and now he's out for the rest of the season.
yeah. Yeah, in a way, it's very blind, but like you said, you have to investigate it, and every situation is different. Think about like the Chicago Bulls, who have seen a lot of success without Levine on the court, right?
It's true.
And so Levine was out with an injury, and I'm sure surgery was on the table, and they were like, "Don't get the surgery, we might trade you." And then finally, they were like, "I don't think we're going to trade you," so he went and got that surgery, right?
That or he
Obviously,
saw the rumor that he was going to the Pistons and was like, "I'm out of here.
I'd rather
I'm
I'd
getting
rather
surgery."
I'd rather play minutes on the Pistons than get benched by the Chicago Bulls, but. I don't think Detroit's all that bad. I think they have Cade. I think they have Duren and obviously Jaden Ivey, who I'm going to continue to hype. But
I mean, I don't understand why they're this bad. Frankly, I
I
don't.
really don't.
Like, I think on paper, there's a lot of guys on that team that I would want on my team. So that's why
I
I
think
don't
it would,
understand why it doesn't work.
I think it would be hilarious if we went back and looked at our preseason predictions and realized how wrong we were. Because I
I
think
mean,
we
we
all
had
had
them
them
low.
pretty high.
Yeah.
I think
Maybe at the All-Star break, we go back and we check it.
yeah,
But
at the All-Star break ep, I think we revisit. We do like a mid-season revisit.
because,
Yeah,
we're actually, I think, technically a little further than halfway at this point. But we're
Yeah,
at
I think
like
we played nearly 50 games.
yeah, we're around like the 50 game mark. But yeah, still, I mean, I think at All-Star break, we can go back and double check that.
Yeah, we were wrong about a lot of things.
Well, God, who saw the Thunder coming?
Yeah, I guess I didn't. I think I had them pretty
None of
low.
us did. Yeah, the
I had the
Timberwolves
Spurs
being
way
this
higher.
good.
I had the Spurs in the play-in. I was like, Wemby is him.
Other than Denver, we don't have any of the top four right. I'm pretty sure in the West.
I
And
think we
God, Golden
got on the
State
Clippers.
down there. Yikes! I had the Rockets super low. The Grizzlies, I wasn't expecting to bottom out like this.
Well, again, another situation where like the Grizzlies were punting on this season, so they told John Morant, go get healthy.
Yeah, I mean, what exactly was his injury? Now I don't remember even what it was. It's been a while, but
I think it was something he was dealing with for a while, and they were just like, okay, let's get it done. And
it was a subluxation of his right shoulder. No idea what that means. They do have a $12.4 million dollar injured player exception from him, though. That was
they
the
wouldn't
first
grant one
article
to
that
the
came up.
Knicks.
So let me think. Next thing I want to talk about. Oh, well, we were just talking All-Stars. We might as well stay in that vein. Other than Sabonis and Fox, is there anyone that you think was deserving of making the team that didn't? And I can run down who's on the teams. I have the rosters in front of me.
I know we talk a lot about Fox, and I made a comment like he's scoring a lot, some more than some of the other scoring guards, but I think Fox is one of those ones that, yeah, he did get snubbed, but there's only so much room on each team. So when
Well,
you
the one I
about
think
it,
is interesting on the West, and it's more like I just don't
the
know.
most interesting one.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Because and it's my perception of the league too, and just from talking to people who are Timberwolves fans, Towns isn't even the best center on their roster. Like Gobert is the guy, and he didn't even make it. And so I just find it very interesting that he got in. When granted, it's a factor of, and
Yeah, I think he
sure,
took
it's fan
Sabonis'
vote.
spot.
It's a mix of 50% fan vote. Although no, the reserves are the coaches' votes. The coaches voted him in, so
Yeah,
it
yeah.
actually doesn't matter. I just think that was very interesting to me that they picked him over those guys.
It's political. I think Towns probably has a bigger personality and, is liked more amongst the league in general. Whereas
I will
Sabonis is
say, selfishly, as someone who's
quiet.
going to watch the All-Star game, I would rather Towns be in than Gobert. I would rather Towns
go.
be in than Sabonis, I think. Fox
Towns
obviously
has a
would be way
personality.
more. Fox would be way more entertaining than any of them. It's just
Yeah.
the All-Star game is kind of built for guards at this point. But
Yeah, it's about throwing down cool dunks. It's built for forwards like the Tatums and the Browns. And
I mean, I wish we would get fun defense again and people actually trying. It's just never going to happen. I just can't believe they're going to start buying in suddenly out of nowhere. But yeah, so those are the big ones in the West. I feel like everything else they pretty much got right. Like I'm going up and down looking at this.
I think it's funny. You're like, oh, I don't think it matter. We're not going to get these hard fought games anymore. You know what I really enjoyed this season? Victor Wembanyama. He's on a
Yeah.
minutes restriction. All the minutes he plays them really hard. And I thought the most fun game to watch was when Oklahoma City absolutely blew out San Antonio, and they put Wemby in garbage time in the fourth quarter, and he went at Chet.
Yeah.
And the people on Twitter were like, does Wemby not see the score? Does he not understand the situation? And he continued to just attack Chet. I thought that was so great. And maybe
Speaking of the two of them, now that you brought them up, and I know we were talking about All-Stars, but I'm starting to think about the All-NBA awards. Rookie of the Year started as a Chet fest, but Chet's kind of hitting a rookie wall, and Wemby is I guess the only way to put it. But it feels like he's getting better. He's like learning how to play in the NBA a little bit more. I think it's neck and neck for me. I was leaning Chet for like probably the full first half of the season. And now in the last like 10 or so games, I've like kind of flipped and I'm more like, ooh, I think it might be Wemby. And if this continues, I think it's totally Wemby's gonna end up winning it.
I think we see the difference in their potentials. I think Chet is going to be a great player, all NBA player. Wemby's going to be a top 5 player, perennial all NBA
I mean, I
every
think
year
the two of them are.
championship.
I think the two of them are like legit. If they stay the course, they'll probably both be Hall of Famers by the end of the day.
I think
Like,
Chet is going to be the most elite 1B option in the entire league.
yeah,
He's slow,
probably.
he's patient, he can hit every shot. He's proven to step up in big games. He has like a I want to win, I want to fight type of mentality, which I think is so huge. So, but like,
I think both of them just ultimately need to be paired with a strong guard. And I think part of why Chet had such a high floor coming into the season was being with SGA, whereas Victor doesn't really have that on the Spurs. So
Yeah.
it's that you see the learning. It's way more apparent his flaws than it is with Chet on the Thunder, just because there's way more of an infrastructure there, and it's easier to play off of a guy like that. Whereas Wemby is just kind of on his own. I mean,
Yeah, and
I
I
don't
think
want
that
to. I don't
affects
want to
their
diminish the Spurs that much, but like, is
it
there
affects
anyone
their
you trust on the
potential.
Spurs? No.
Like Chet's going to grow into that 1B option, which is why I think he's going to be the best one.
Right.
Where Wemby right now is that guy. They say we need a shot, hit it, and they both do special things. You can't discredit that, right?
Yeah.
They're both super unique. So, but I think Wemby's going to be more of like a Kevin Durant type of guy, and Chet's going to be more of like I don't know, Scottie Pippen to someone's Jordan. So
Interesting.
not a bad career.
No. God, no. Yeah. Those are total home run picks, assuming they stay healthy. But
Yeah, hopefully. I think the minutes
um,
restriction is obviously interesting. Chet missed a whole year with injuries, so
yeah. All right, let me think. Is there anything else major
Mike, I
circling
feel
the
like you've
NBA
been
right
very
now?
quiet. What's on your mind?
No, I've totally just been listening. I think everything's been spot on. Truly.
Yeah,
So I'm trying to, yeah, there's really nothing. I mean, other than like, what the hell are some of these teams doing? Like, what are the Brooklyn Nets doing? They're kind of in no man's land. I think you look at a team like, I mean, the Jazz are a little bit better. They're at least winning, but like, what are they doing? What are the Warriors doing? Like, there's a lot of teams with that need to kind of pick a lane. I remember when we first started doing the podcast where we did like just a segment that was like blow it up or keep it together.
Mhm.
They're prime blow it up or keep it together teams. Like, I just don't know what they're doing. The Bulls, again, I saw a report today that they want to stay competitive. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
The Pistons aren't trading their like serviceable players at this point.
I personally think it shows a shift in the NBA's mentality. I think before we see a lot of, I mean, obviously like the Bucks fired their coach this year, but I think we see a lot of these guys with short leashes. I think now we're starting to see some of these front offices realize that they did all this craziness and it's just time to slow it down, relax a little bit. You know,
I
you
think
don't
the
need to
new
just shift the scales from one end to the other.
it's the
Balance
dark
everything.
cloud on the horizon with that new CBA. Everyone's afraid of it. No one knows what it's going to look like, and so they're like, let's just get there, and then we'll cross that
Yeah,
bridge.
that could 100% be it. I think, I think the NBA is in a weird state where you have a couple of teams who are super, super rich and you have a whole bunch of teams who are kind of in no man's land. I honestly think more than half the league is stuck in a bad situation. So
Pretty much, yeah. um, all right. Is there anything else we want to hit before wrapping up this bad guy? Wow, the silence. It seems like we did everything we needed to do.
I think we're pretty much there. And then
Well,
tracking,
whatever happens tomorrow that shocks us
but,
and like
but
makes
I'm
everything
led,
we just said obsolete.
but I'm led to believe, yeah, I'm led to believe that nothing's going to shock us tomorrow.
I
Like,
don't think anything big's happening.
it's
I
going to be
can't
quiet.
imagine something big happens. Although the Kevin Durant trade happened out of nowhere last year. Like, that was even 3 days before the deadline. No one saw that coming. And then it was like, I want out a day
But
before.
what was the situation that the Nets were in? It was
Disarray.
Kyrie couldn't play, or they had already traded Kyrie.
They had already traded Kyrie. No, I'm forgetting the order now.
yes.
They had already traded Kyrie.
And they still had Harden. Or no, they traded
No.
Harden in the
Harden was
beginning of the
gone.
season.
Harden was gone. Yeah.
Right. So they were down to Kyrie and KD, and I think
Yeah.
again, almost the same situation as the Lakers. What's next? What do we do after these guys? And they just punted.
Yeah.
And they got a lot back. I think the Nets they have all these guys who are like,
The
you
Lakers
know,
should do
if you
it.
could,
I'm
yeah,
firm in that camp. It would make sense.
trade LeBron to the Sixers for all of their forwards, and then trade all of those forwards for
Honestly,
first round
though,
picks.
if you do that and you build a similar team that the Sixers have in LA around AD, it could work. Just throwing it out there. It could
I
make
think
sense. You
AD 's
don't
that
necessarily
dominant.
need to. I don't know. He's been
Not-
pretty damn good this year. He's not as
he's
good
not
as
a-
Embiid, but yeah.
He's the most elite vertical spacer. He's going to protect your rim. He's going to control all the lob space on offense. But like, I don't ever feel that he is a dominant post player. I don't
No.
think his jump shot is good enough.
I agree with that. I definitely agree with that.
Whereas like
Uh,
Embiid, he coming down the floor, you don't want to let him shoot within 15 feet. Whereas AD, it's
Yeah.
like you keep him out the paint, you're golden.
Well, that's because Embiid's making them like layups. His success rate from anywhere inside the paint is just out of this world.
Yeah, I think you sent that tweet. His
Yeah, I
efficiency.
forget what it was. Yeah.
He's shooting with better efficiency from like 12 feet than most people are at the rim.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, he's just changing the way you have to defend in the modern NBA. Because, I
100%.
mean, we went through that weird period where centers didn't matter, and now centers are so important if you have like a versatile center.
It's all
So
about
we're
speed.
seeing it. Yeah. This transition is super interesting. And we're obviously, I know we did a big thing on Chet and Wemby, but like that's the big future.
Another huge one. Guys who
Yeah.
can play three positions.
Exactly. All right. Well, if there's nothing else for us to discuss, I'll give you one last chance. We will wrap this one up. All righty. Well, for those of you who have made it this far, thank you for tuning in. This is the Hoop Troop podcast. Join us next time.